All right, we are in the final content session of the day. Don't miss me and Jeremy afterwards. But really excited to be here. And before we do introductions, you guys hopefully have enjoyed a lot of the great content today, hopefully getting some clarity into some of those questions that you've been asking yourselves. And really the goal of our session is to bring all those strategies and tactics and recommendations that we shared with you today all together to talk about how to launch a successful omnichannel strategy. So we are very excited to have two amazing partners on stage with me today and let them introduce themselves.
Great. Hi, I'm Maya Wasserman. I head up marketing for our TV and our video and sound departments at Sony Electronics. So we make TVs, projectors, sound bars, headphones, wireless speakers, all of that falls under me, and I oversee marketing strategy and execution across all the channels.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Elon. I run our paid media at OLLY. If you're not familiar with OLLY, we're a vitamin brand that make the, in my unbiased opinion, most delicious and positive gummies in the market. We also have some in your goodie bag, so if you don't know us, you get to try us for the first time, and excited to be here.
Great. Two amazing brands. So we're going to kick off and start at what really is the core and the foundational layer of any omnichannel strategy, which is data. And who doesn't love talking about data? So as privacy changes, everyone's been hearing a lot about the privacy changes and the impact that it's having on brands as a whole. Probably the most important thing at this point is collecting, storing, and analyzing that 1P data. So to kick off, would love to understand how successful or not you have been in that journey, and if there are challenges, what are those challenges and how are you overcoming them? So we'll start with Maya.
Great. Super sexy topic.
Yeah,
data.
Exactly.
So I would say a few years ago we made a decision to make first-party data a priority for us. So happy to say that in 3 years we were able to double our customer records. So really great in collecting the data. I think the question after that is, what do we do with it now that we have it? So we've been really looking at the data and trying to analyze it, trying to see who's our customer, what trends are we seeing, looking at the data trends over time, what sort of affinities are we seeing within our customers, how do we better personalize our marketing towards those audiences, and then also visualizing that in a visualization tool. The hardest part is now activating against that. So we are onboarding a CDP to help with that. But the next step is really getting more precise and more impactful in how we're activating against all that data, whether that's in our media or email or any other touch point.
Do you want to share a little bit about OLLY?
Yeah. I think transparently we're not quite where Sony is in terms of having one data CDP. I think at this point we're really segmented. We use a CDP called Segment, which I find very confusing in terms of naming conventions, but we also utilize Attentive, Shopify, and Glue. I think having our data segmented in that way, we've really had to focus on the life cycle journey and how do we reach our consumers and talk to them in different ways, and what that life cycle marketing is a bit different for email, SMS, for paid media efforts. And so long term, I think Segment, the CDP segment, is really going to be a big growing tool for our performance marketing, and it continues to be something that we're leaning into further, but I think there's still opportunity for us.
Definitely. All right, and then obviously once you have the data, you're analyzing it, you're trying to find new ways to activate it. How do you go about making the decisions on where you're actually going to be activating that data? And is there, within your organizations, is there challenges that you guys have faced with just educating folks internally on that activation piece? So Elon, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I can speak this one because I think this one is really exciting, kind of unique for OLLY. Ollie's 8 years old. We feel like we're a disruptor of the VMS space. I think for a long time, vitamins were sold by letters. We really sell by the benefits. So what do you actually need, and finding that. And so with, I think, that as our foundation, the company really focuses on autonomy for channel experts. So if we want to test something in paid media or in Omni or whatever it is, it's not so much about we need to sell this to our boss who sells it to their boss, etc. It's very much focused on let's do things, test them, learn, optimize, and then share that across channel. And I think kind of having that channel ownership instead of just sharing for a sharing sake model, it really has allowed us to be a lot more nimble and disrupt and try different things. I think one example that comes to mind for me was we kick off our year with a very big New Year's campaign. I think the New Year's is a really optimal time to build new healthy habits, and Tenuity gave us a big suggestion on you focusing on a top view ad on the TikTok space. And if you haven't run a top view, it's basically the first ad you see when you are on TikTok. It's kind of like the Super Bowl of those ads, and it was a big idea for us, and the buy-in, I didn't really have to go about it from a buy-in perspective. It was like, let's test this and learn, and had a very significant effect on our business. We ended up going viral a few days later, so it was really cool, and now it's become more of a part of our funnel.
Very cool. And then on the Sony side?
Yeah, I'm jealous because we do, we work cross-functionally a lot, and there is a lot of consensus building that does have to happen. But the good news about that is that our business leaders are pretty well versed in what we're doing in marketing and in media. We also do a quarterly culture tap meeting where we just share what's trending, what's happening, what platforms are people on, what kind of content is happening, what lingo are Gen Z using, anything, so that when we come with ideas, it's not out of left field. So I usually try to prime things within that culture tab of
Smart, yeah.
this is what we're going to actually be asking you for next quarter. So we do a lot of education with our business units, but ultimately, as far as what platforms to go in, we don't want to be somewhere just because that's the cool place. Right. It has to align to our business objectives and our audience, and everything always ties back to that. So we always start with what are we trying to do and who are we trying to talk to, and if that platform or media channel aligns, then there is definitely support to test and try. But ultimately, there has to be a reason for it. And oftentimes when we test, sometimes it's let's test without going all in on a new channel with creating our own, everything. And it's maybe we test with influencers in that channel first and see how things work before we start building out a plan around it.
Makes sense. How many folks attend the cultural tap meeting?
It's like the whole business unit, basically.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So pretty.
And then we also do a version for leadership, and then we send it to Tokyo too. So.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay, so once you've defined the media plan and you understand who those target customers are, how do you ensure that there's a cohesive and connected story that's being told across all of the different touch points? And really, how do you work internally with the different teams to ensure that there is that connectivity? And if there's any challenges as well, if you could share those too.
Yeah, so we have a Marcom team that they're really responsible for that unified message. So we always say, like in Trivial Pursuit, they're the piece that goes around all the other little pieces, and each of those little pieces has a piece of the pie that they're an expert on. But we have to make sure that it's all cohesive across the touch points. So they're looking at every piece of content from a brand messaging perspective and brand voice, and ensuring that it's cohesive. And then we also look at customer journey. We try to understand where our customers want to hear from us, how they want to hear from us. And we just make sure that we're, being consistent with what the customers want first. One big challenge we have is across retailers. So we can control our voice within our own channels, but when you're working with a third-party retailer and we run media through those retailers, it has to be in their brand voice, which we want, and that's important. But we also have to ensure that, there's a voice of truth in there that stays true to who we are as a brand. But ultimately, we sell across a lot of retailers, and so, that's definitely a challenge, is making sure, wherever a customer engages with our brand, that they're having a consistent experience. One thing we have done in the past couple years, so we have a extensive sales team, and historically, they were in charge of the sales floor. So going into the stores and training the sales team, talking to customers on the sales floor. But as we all know, everything is moving online. And so we've actually started activating that team online as well to ensure that we're, from a sales perspective, having a similar voice. So they do online one-on-one consultations. They are creating like how-to videos for our YouTube. They're doing YouTube Live and Amazon Live videos. So whether you're in a store or you're buying online, you're still having that same sales experience. We even have them reaching out to customers who are talking about our brands on social and creating one-on-one connections with those people, and using those as kind of like micro influencers that we can connect to as a brand. So it's been a really great program that allows us to just span what we're doing in store, online as well.
I think to add to that, it's hard. I think the short answer. Very similar, we do have a marketing communications team. I think what we found has been the most crucial point to that consistency across channel is really bringing marketing, communications, creative, and sales really into that campaign development process. And our creative team, really specifically, they're part of the tactical planning really from the beginning with marketing communications, because creative, they support so many different aspects of our product, our marketing, our campaigns. And so it allows us to have consistency across campaign and then across offline in-store activations. Again, that being said, it's very hard. I feel like it sounds so much easier when we put it this way. But I think one of the things that we've found is that the offline component, the in-store, has the longest lead times. So when you're working with Target, Walmart, and that doesn't align to your campaign development period, how can you be consistent? And I think that kind of comes back to the brand voice. And I think if the campaign year over year, you're building on it, but it's still your brand message, I think that really resonates with our consumer. And I think who OLLY is has been very consistent over the years. And I think the best brands can really do that. But it's a challenge, because you do also want to iterate and you learn things about your consumer that are like, I want to improve this part of our brand or tell our story a little bit differently. I think the other side of it is also, once we're live, we really focus on the real-time optimization. So with partners that we can, especially on the digital space, we have an integrated marketing meeting. So once a month, we bring in all our agencies, all our external partners, and share cross-channel learnings, because if it's working in one space, there's a good chance it's going to work in the other space, and the more information that we're sharing, the better effect that we're going to have.
Definitely. Which actually is a good segue into testing. We've talked a lot today about testing and experimentation, but as you learn more about your audiences, and put more into market across these channels and these different strategies, are there any tests that you guys have done recently that have really taught you something new about the business or something new about your audience? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We are also really big on testing, and I say every test is a success because you should have learned something. Yeah. So even if you didn't get the result you want, you got a learning from it. So one test we did recently was with Google. So obviously, normally when we send traffic to a third-party retailer, it's like a black hole, right? You send it and then you don't know what happened, and you hope that it did something, but you don't know. And so a lot of our business is done on those third-party retailers. So we did a Google test where we did a geo-targeting campaign within key markets of within a certain radius of certain stores. And then we were able to see a sales lift in those stores versus the control group. So it was a great way to actually show that our media is doing something in store when usually it's really hard to make that connection. So that was a really interesting test, and we're continuing to reiterate on that and optimize it moving forward. But yeah, I mean, every campaign has multiple tests, whether it's creative, audience, campaign, partner. We're always trying to just improve and optimize performance.
What about from the OLLY perspective?
Yeah, definitely similar. Lots of testing. I think that's the great part of our current age. We definitely start with a focus on a learning agenda. So whenever we start a campaign, we have a really wonderful insights team that puts together a larger learning agenda that then within each of our channel experts, they can focus on their tactics. How can we accomplish this learning agenda? Which then gives us a lot of cross-functional insights, and some of them are applicable to others, some that are really channel specific. So many tests, I think, in terms of examples. I think a few that come to mind, we recently launched a new line of gummies, a fitness line, so pre and post workout. And for the most part, a lot of our messaging is very much about delight, product benefit, lifestyle, and we felt like this was a great opportunity. Athletes, they're really going to like science. Let's tell them about what's the ingredients and like what that ingredient specifically does. And so we tested same, visual type of ad, and then overlay copy around very like S7 plant-based. This is what this ingredient does versus more of our consistent messaging for our brand. And to my surprise, the brand messaging one. I thought athletes would really resonate with that more. And so it was, specific to that. But then what we did is lean further into our brand messaging into this new product line. So hopefully, showing a new audience what, who OLLY is was really, we could take learnings that we already had about brand messaging to that line. One that I think is pretty cool that Tenuity brought to us as a test and learn. Tenuity's always kind of sharing ideas around what things we could do to continue our efficiency and improve. We took our DPA frame, so like if anybody gets those carousel ads on Meta, the most boring ad, right? Anybody's from Meta here, I'm sorry. I've heard them say it's the most boring ad, but it's super efficient, and it pulls your product feed. It's the white background, and we wanted to see if putting some sort of overlay, some sort of background on the edges of the frame, if that would have an effect. And so we tested out different versions, different amounts of background, and versus the generic, to no surprise, the overlay background work, and now we're iterating into, okay, what within that background could have a larger effect? Should we do it by product category? So it's always be testing.
Definitely. Maya, we're going to talk specifically about driving consumer purchase. So obviously the goal of any successful omnichannel strategy is really to drive the consumer to purchase. So how well do you understand where your consumers are buying the product, how they're engaging with the brand? Can you tell us a little bit about that from your perspective?
Yeah, so we do lots of research, whether that's quantitative, qualitative. We survey our customers a lot, just to understand more about where they're buying, why they're buying. We are always looking at our first party data, like I said, monthly, and really trying to dig into that. Where it gets challenging is across retailers. Like what makes someone purchase at one retailer versus the other? And every retailer shares different amount of data. So where we can pull data from the retailers to understand our customers there, we do. And then we try to fill in blanks where we can. But we use all of that data to inform our creative and everything else. But that's another area where we use our sales team to do those one-on-one consultations, reach out to customers on social and understand, what made them purchase, all of those things. Basically, anytime we can talk to a customer and learn more, we try to take advantage of that to learn as much as we can.
Great.
I think to add to that, I think one thing that's really interesting with different retailers and as you learn more about your consumer is what products resonate in those different spaces. So the top OLLY products in offline, Target, Walmart, is not the same that's on Amazon. It's definitely not the same that's on olly.com. And so even though from a omni-channel campaign, this is our brand message, the products that are featured on different channels can be different. And so finding that, understanding what products resonate with the right customers is super key to that research for us.
Definitely.
I imagine it's the same.
Yeah, very much.
In terms of, I think also we have an insights teams, surveys, one-on-one interviews, shop-alongs in store. I think you name it, they do consumer decision trees. They really, arm us with data to understand our consumer and then be able to action on it is really key.
It's great. We've talked a lot today too about technology and automation, and I know both of your brands, you guys spoke about this a little bit earlier, but you're in your different stages of your transformation. But as you look at technology and automation, what tools are you using today? Again, going back to kind of success and challenges that you've had, would love to hear kind of your perspective on that.
Yeah, so email is one where we are using Salesforce Marketing Cloud to automate. We have about 100 different triggered emails and pathways for customers based on a million different things. So a lot of back end work to get to where we are on that. I think the next step for us is how do we apply that more within our media? So as I said, we have a CDP that we're onboarding. So the hope is we know that there's, again, a lot of back end and it takes time to build all those sequences, but really moving into more of that sequencing within media is kind of the next step for us to really customize the experience based on each customer. So I imagine there will be more testing and more implementation as we move forward with that.
What about Ollie?
Yes. I think, yes, we're seeing automation coming. It's definitely impacting both positively our media efforts, and I think in some ways it's going to be more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
We're a VMS. Like there's a lot of regulation what you can and can't say, and so I think as this rolls out, there's guardrails that are going to need to be put in place. A couple tactics that we are seeing it perform really well is a program called Performance Max on Google, Advantage Plus on Meta. They're really driving just more efficiencies within our creative and our ad campaigns, but they also have their own challenges. I think, while they're making things more efficient, by just dumping everything in and letting it be automated, you lose some learnings and you lose some insights. And I think that we have a lot of desire for more visibility into how these tools are working because we want to take those learnings to other channels. And I think that's always going to be a bit, or at least now is a bit of a push and pull. How much do we want to invest in that? Because we can't, quote unquote, see behind the curtain. Is it the Wizard of Oz? Is somebody back there pulling the levers, or is it a machine? Like, why can't we know that information?
If you haven't reached out to the Meta and Google reps here,
we
I'm sure they would love to answer that question. So in closing, would love to, again, just leave everyone here today with just any advice or insight that you guys have. Obviously have executed and activated really successful omnichannel strategies. So Maya, we'll start with you.
Yeah, test. So we review our campaigns weekly, monthly, quarterly, end of campaign. We're constantly looking and testing and, along the way. And I think there's just so much change happening. There's so much data out there, and there's so much you can do. It's what should you do? So I think setting up some really clear tests and learning and just kind of optimizing as you go is just really critical.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it just starts with your consumer. I think from the journey perspective, understanding your consumer, where it's most optimal to meet them, when. I think timing is so much a part of it as well. Yes, definitely build a plan, but bake into the plan that plan is going to completely change, and you should plan for the unexpected, and then have contingencies for like what's plan B, C, F, and because nothing goes according to plan, things get disapproved, timelines move. And I think the last part is, always be optimizing. I think a lot of times you're just trying to get to launch, and so much more of the opportunity is post-launch. Mm-hmm. And so what already baked in is, what is your 14-day look? What are you actually trying to evaluate? What's that 30? Because I think we see it with Tenuity all the time. Some of our best performing content runs in that 30 to 90 days because we're optimizing, we're looking at it. We're not just trying to get there.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.